I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Forbes senior contributor Jack Kelly. Jack, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's a little less fun of a conversation than we had last time when we discussed bare minimum Mondays, but now we're talking about three banks that imploded within the past week: Silicon Valley, Signature, and Silvergate. I want to talk about the ramifications of these failures, but first, can you walk us through how exactly did this happen?
So, what happened is this, in my opinion. I'm not going to pretend to be this great economist, but I've done a whole lot of homework on it. And what happened is this: with Silicon Valley Bank, it seems it boils down to they bought mortgage-backed securities at 1.5% or 2%, very long dated. And the reason they did it because the Fed was really telling the banks, hey, you want to have treasuries, want to save bonds to keep it safe, keep your bank safe. Everything worked out fine when it was low interest rates and there was no inflation. But when inflation came around and interest rates came up, you had the bonds that were for 1.2%, 1.5%, and you can now go and get 4% at your local bank. So the bonds just cratered because no one wants to buy them. So they had billions and billions in unrealized losses. So then when people started looking at their financial situation, they're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. You're in horrible shape. And then it didn't help when the CEO gave kind of a quasi conference. He went out there and told people what's going on, and he did not perform well. And in fact, just the opposite. He freaked people out. And then before you know it, well, let me add this to it. This is a new phenomenon. On Twitter, everybody was saying, take your money out. Oh my gosh, it's going to go broke. Others were saying, no, don't say that. You're going to have a run on the bank. So you ended up having a run on the bank where everybody was freaked out and taking their money out. And then what happened? There's nothing left. They have to just kind of have the FDIC come in there, close the doors, and start all over again.
I want to talk about the ripple effects here because obviously last week when you saw this banks collapse, that's terrifying and harkens back to 2008, and no one wants to see that again. I know that for sure. But how is this impacting other banks in the country?
I think what's going to happen now is both depositors, regulators, auditors are going to really look closely at the banks to see their financial safety and see what are they doing. Are they making the same mistakes that SVB made or not? So there's going to be a lot of homework here being done. It's a little different than the financial crisis because then it wasn't just one or two banks that we have now. It was just a systemic thing across the board where everything just kind of fell apart. So I'm hoping that we kind of ring-fenced what's going on. We have the regulators looking at things. We have the government backstopping. And you could argue whether that's good or not, that you're bailing it out, but it seems that they're putting support behind it. Even Credit Suisse, which is not a US-based bank, it's a Swiss-based bank, they're also in Europe kind of supporting that bank. So it seems like they're trying to get ahead of it so we could kind of contain the damage.
It seemed like last week there was a lot of panic. This week there seems to be a little more confidence. It doesn't seem like every financial institution is collapsing as we know it right now. But I do want to talk about the fallout here. Do these bank failures have the power to impact the job market?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I think it's going to start with the banks that were impacted. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, First Republic. Well, they didn't go under, but they're one of the ones that kind of open to question. Silvergate Bank. So first of all, those people are probably going to lose their jobs. They might stick around for a while to help in the transition, but they're going to lose their jobs. Then what's going to happen, I believe, unfortunately, is that a lot of companies are going to say, we have to be worried, particularly in the banking and the financial institutions. And usually what occurs is there's going to be belt tightening because they're going to say, hey, we have to be really careful because we don't want to be the next one. So what do? Cut costs, do whatever it takes to rein in expenses. And one of the things with banks is the people. That's the biggest expense. So they're going to let go of people, figuring, hey, we're going to hunker down and try to ride this out. But when this happens across the board, and it's likely to see a contagion, because if one bank does it, the other banks are going to look and say, hey, we should probably do it too, because if we don't, maybe we'll be in trouble, and we don't want to, we don't want this happening to us. So you could start seeing like dominoes where other places will lay off, put on hiring freezes, and it puts people in a precarious position, because even before this whole thing with the banks collapsing, the tech sector was hit hard, other sectors. So there's this kind of fear permeating throughout the economy. And when that happens too, whether it's the banking sector or Wall Street or wherever, all these companies are going to start saying, hey, maybe we got to lighten the load. Facebook is a good example, or Meta is a good example, where Mark Zuckerberg recently just announced another 10,000-ish layoffs after a prior 11,000 layoffs, with the idea that he wants a year of efficiency, which is a polite way of saying cutting costs and letting go of people and putting on hiring freezes.
Jack, we've seen in the headlines now for months a looming recession, and you've touched on that point exactly. Is this doing anything to quell those fears?
I think with this happening, it's going to be a higher probability of having a recession. Some people could argue we're kind of in one now, but it seems that there's going to, with still high inflation, with high interest rates, with a lot of now unemployment, it looks like it's going to be a recession. However, it doesn't, as of now, look like anything is majorly broken. And I know that sounds uncomfortable given that Silicon Valley Bank is a large organization, but it may be a one-off in terms of how they ran their portfolios and how they ran their company. And hopefully, as time goes on and we look at other banks, if they're in better shape, it might be very helpful. But either way, I think for people, for workers, for people who are in between jobs, this is going to be a different time period, and you're going to have to act differently.
I do want to break that down, but something that you said that just struck me is nothing's majorly broken. That sounds decently optimistic in this semi-scary time. So if nothing's majorly broken, what's the solution here? What needs to be fixed?
I think what's going to happen now, you're probably going to get, the regulators from the FDIC, from the SEC, from state regulators to kind of come into these banks and audit them, examine them, look at the books. So I think you're going to have this swarm of coming in to see, hey, what's really going on behind the scenes. They're going to look at their investment portfolio. They're going to look at the quality of the loans being made and check it out. And hopefully, if it looks like a lot of banks are in good shape, then it's not so bad. If it turns out that there's a lot of SVBs all over the place, then I think we're going to have another conversation about what's going to go wrong next. But I got a feeling it's not, because we probably would have heard that already. With social media, things travel so quickly. So I think if there are a lot of banks that are in trouble, we would have started hearing already. We would get rumors of it. You'd see short sellers shorting their stock. You'd see a lot of people, just saying, watch out for Bank X, watch out for Bank Y. We're not really seeing it. Think about it. The last day or two, when I'm looking at Twitter, and not that that's the benchmark, but, you get a good real-time feel. You could just feel the temperature has been coming down. It's not as heated. People aren't as frantic. And I think if they know, and these people are smart who are on there, you're talking about sophisticated financial experts, are there weighing in. So if they're not ringing the alarm bell, that gives me some comfort that there's no glaring big issues that are there, at least for now.